everybody. Dan Illman, Mike here. The DRF race of the day for Saturday, June the 22nd. Race number 13 at Thistledown. It's a signature race of the Thistledown meet all year long. It's the Grade 3 Ohio Derby. 3-year-olds going a mile and an eighth. 10 entered. The big name in here is the number 8, Catching Freedom, who bypassed the Belmont Stakes after running a good 4th in the Kentucky Derby, a good 3rd in the Preakness, and he's simply the horse to beat in here, and maybe he can use this race as a springboard to a big second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it just kind of seems like a good idea to take a step back with him. They certainly could have run him in the Belmont Stakes, Dad. It's not like he didn't run well enough in the Derby and the Preakness to take another shot in that race, but they're probably doing the right thing here. They found a great spot for him.
Let's throw up our time form U.S. pace projector for the Ohio Derby. The good news with a horse like Catching Freedom, and I know they have him far, far back early, is he has shown the ability to stay a little bit closer to the pace if necessary. Who's the king? Batten Down, especially Batten Down. That's the horse you have to worry about from a pace perspective.
Yeah, we'll see how this pace plays out and how fast it gets, and then we'll see if Batten Down, even if he gets the trip that he probably wants in here, Dan, if he can just move forward enough to make himself a strong contender in here. It's far from impossible. He has a little bit of talent.
Monmouth-based horseman Greg Sacco claimed the number 1 Frizzante for $32,000 out of a runner-up effort in his seasonal debut in a maiden race. He's done pretty well with this horse. Here's his most recent start at Parks. This is a first-level allowance race on May the 27th, going a mile. He's on the outside in here. He's got to look at it. He's just not going to be able to get by the horse on the rail. And from watching the races that day, I just thought the inside was very good.
I mean, perhaps it's enough of an excuse, Dan, if you like this horse. I mean, he's got every chance to win here, and he just can't quite get by. And then you start going through his other races, and it's pretty clear that he's not fast enough to win this race.
Gould's Gold, the number 2, sort of lost, and deservedly so, in the shadow of his stablemate Mystic Dan. But Brian Hernandez and Ken McPeak are going to try to weave some of that Derby magic with Gould's Gold. And they almost did it in the Sir Barton at Pimlico. This is a restricted race for horses that had not won a stakes race, and Gould's Gold's got the lead, turning into the stretch after pushing the fractions, and he's just going to be denied at the very end.
He runs well in here, though. He did a lot of the hard work up on the pace. He looks like he's going to get it done there, Dan, past mid-stretch. He just can't quite hold on. It's another good performance, another move in the right direction for Gould's Gold. He's still really lightly raced. We'll see. I'm not sure that I love him, as the distances get longer in these races, but he's pretty good so far.
He's pretty good. He's very tactical, and he drew a nice inside post position. Looks like Brian can work out perhaps one of his patented ground-saving trips, at least going into the backstretch. Charleston is the number 3. This guy is still a maiden, but they've put him in at least one tough spot. That was the Southwest 2 starts back. He didn't pass that test after missing the break. They're putting the blinkers on. He was listed as a vet scratch back in March, so now he's coming into this race 3 months after the vet scratch against much tougher horses.
I wonder what I missed in the maiden special weight race there out of the Southwest, because I guess that was encouraging enough for them to come back in the Ohio Derby.
Copper Tax is the number 4, and he is one of the better Mid-Atlantic-based 3-year-olds of 2024. He was certainly the best 2-year-old in the region in 2023, and they tried him in the Remsen. It didn't work. They tried him in the Sam F. Davis. He was awful. Gary Capuano told me he didn't like the track. They come back. He wins 2 in a row in Maryland, and the Federico Tessio is a race where you should go into your free formulator past performances and watch from start to finish, because he broke from a terrible outside post. He misses the break. He's extremely wide going into the first turn, going a mile and an eighth. And maybe he was just fortunate that this pace was very fast, but I thought he was all heart and determination to run down this horse.
I agree. This is an underrated performance. He did have some things go his way, but he had enough trouble in here to not only to not win, but not win as easily as he wound up winning at the end. It was a really good performance. I actually thought he ran really well 2 starts back. Also, he's got something to prove here against the better horses, Dan. We don't know that, at least based off the Remsen and the Sam Davis, we don't know that he really classes up with horses like this, but his last 2 races are a good sign.
And with a record of 7 for 10, you couldn't, you wouldn't have been able to blame Gary if he wanted to be the local hope in this year's Preakness Stakes, and he decided that wouldn't have been a good idea for the horse. He's kept him working right along, and this is the spot they've chosen for a long time. We'll see if he's as good as these horses. Well, Uncle Heavy is another very good Mid-Atlantic-based runner. This guy won the Withers, and just nothing's gone right for him, seemingly, after the Withers. After that race, a really game performance on a wet track, he had to miss a little bit of time because he was stuck in quarantine in New York. They ran him in the wood. He had a terrible post position. And the Preakness last time out, he's probably not that kind of horse. So maybe he's dirtied up enough that it's 6-1. That's a fair price.
I think that's a fair way to look at him. I mean, he didn't run great in the Preakness, and so you can do what you want with that performance. But I don't think you're supposed to be too hard on him for it. It's not like his wood was a total disaster. He had enough working against him that day that it's another race. I don't think you're supposed to be too hard on him for it. His Withers was really good. I know it's only an 84 buyer. I know he only won by a nose, and it's not like it was a field full of superstars. He ran great in that race. I think he deserves a chance here. Third off the layoff now. He fits with these horses. He's just got to improve a little bit. And I think that's something you're going to see from this horse in the second half of the year.
And Butch Reed, entered him in the Pegasus last week, but he had told me 2 weeks ago that was just to get a look around. He wanted to run this horse in the Ohio Derby, and here he is. I think he's an underrated runner. Deposition is the number 6. Now, this horse fell in a very scary incident in the Wood Memorial and then was no match in the Sir Barton when finishing behind Gould's Gold. Well, they dropped him into a nice little 2-life allowance race in Delaware, and Deposition got the job done. By far, it was his best performance recently. Maybe it was the Lasix. Probably it was the weaker competition.
Yeah, you do have to. Yeah, it's right to point out that he got Lasix for this race, though, Dan, because he's got to take it back off here for the Ohio Derby. Doesn't get to run with it. This was a step in the right direction, though. It's not. He'd run some okay races along the way. This trainer, he likes to take shots in races like this, Dan, and sometimes it pays off for him at big prices.
Trainer Safi Joseph can win big races, and he's got the 7 Who's the King in for Kem Ramsey. This guy won immediately off the claim, going a 1-turn mile at Gulfstream Park. They ran him in a restricted allowance at Churchill last time out, and he just seemed like he was pulling very hard behind the leaders, and he then got tired. For me, a 1.125 is a major concern, and there are class issues as well.
Yeah, I think they're both things to be worried about. I did think, though, that he looked pretty good winning off the claim there when they switched him back to dirt. To me, it just sort of suggests that this is the right surface for this horse. Whether this is the right race to run him in, that's a totally different question. But it'll be a very big price in this race, and the effort 2 back was pretty good.
Catching Freedom, the number 8, deserves to be favored. He's the 9-5 morning line chalk. He's probably one of the top 10 3-year-olds in the country based on his win in the Louisiana Derby. He had a very nice trip and ride in the Derby and ran a fine 4th. And in the Preakness, I thought all in all the trip was there for him. You see him cruising in behind the leaders, turning for home. Pratt finds the right spot, splitting 3 wide. I'm a little disappointed he didn't get second from a tiring Mystic Dan, but again, he ran his race.
Yeah, I'll agree with all that stuff. He ran fine in here. It did sort of feel like, I thought out of the gate, Dan, that Pratt was really going to get forward with him. And it feels like the plan was to just follow Mystic Dan. I think they thought Mystic Dan was the horse to beat, and they wanted to follow him. They let that horse get in front of them and then followed him around the track. And ultimately, maybe they had a little bit too much to do in the stretch. I'm kind of with you. I wish he had gotten second. I didn't think he ran great, but it was far from a terrible performance. He's just way the horse to beat in here.
3 consecutive 97 buyers on the way in. If he runs that race, it might be good enough to win here, and maybe he can improve a little bit off of that performance in the Preakness. Batten Down's the interesting new face for Bill Mott. This is a beautifully bred Judd Mott, homebred by Tappet, who looks like he's starting to put things together. His most recent start at Churchill Downs, he's odds on, and we talk about it a lot. I'm not sure how much we trust these 10-furlong maiden races at Churchill Downs, but boy, Batten Down won by a city mile.
He really did look good winning that race. I wonder, I kind of feel like that, and you can disagree with this if you want. I feel like putting him on the lead and just letting him power along just made all the difference with him there, because his prior 3 races, you can go back and watch any one of them. He looks like a really hard horse to ride at this stage of his career. He's always pulling. He's always under a really hard hold. It looks like he just doesn't want horses in front of him. So Junior Alvarado just put him on the lead last time, and it's not like he walked up there. He just let him power along, and he smashed that field. That was a pretty encouraging performance from this horse.
And I know the Timeform US has him up there with another horse early. I think if Junior decides to go with this horse, that he is the speed of the speed, and he might be able to control things a long way. He's a really interesting alternative, especially at that number. The 10 is Mugatu, and we saw Mugatu try things out in the Preakness, and it didn't work very well for him at 17-1, which some folks might have thought was an underlay after he was fifth at 101-1 in the Bluegrass. I guess horses like Mugatu, though, always have a puncher's chance if the pace collapses.
If nothing else, this is a better spot than the Preakness. I don't know how much a better spot it is, but it's a little bit better. He didn't run well last time. It was a wet track against better horses. His Bluegrass, listen, it just wasn't very good. It's not like he did a ton of running in there, but the figure that he earned suggests he has some kind of chance.
Suggests that maybe he's been a dirt horse all along, even though he's earned his victories over other surfaces. Before we take a look at our top selection, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time, it's the Grade 3 Ohio Derby. It's kind of an important race for Catching Freedom, Mike. He kind of has to win it. And I think if he wins it, people are going to say, well, he had to win it on paper. And if he loses, people are going to start saying, how good is he?
Those positions might be valid too, Dad. I'm with you. I feel like this is the kind of race he's supposed to win. We'll see what kind of trip he can pull in here. I just think he's way the horse to beat in here. If like Uncle Heavy's 6-1 on the morning line, that's not a price that I would take against Catching Freedom in here. But if he drifts way up off that number, which I think is possible, I could take a shot with him. I think this is a race that he can be really competitive in.
I'm curious to see what we get from sort of the upside horses like Gould's Gold, horses like Batten Down, horses that might be just coming into their own, while we've seen Catching Freedom through some of his toughest efforts and likely in his best form. But if Catching Freedom runs his race, he's way the horse to beat in the Ohio Derby. 8592 for Mike, 8924 for me. Best of luck.